champions, yes!
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It's the Full 40 with Chris and Rob, part of the Stay Tuned Network, brought to you by Nova Insider. After a 6-month hiatus, we are back at the start of season 5 of the podcast. It was a little dicey there over the summer. I became a dad, but we figured out a way. We got a new producer in town, Brian. We got a social media manager in Rachel. And we have a big full team to join me and Rob on the podcast to really bring you great content throughout this Villanova season all the way through. And we're super excited to be back with you today. Isn't that right, Rob?
That is absolutely right. I hope everybody enjoyed my favorite episode of the season, which was the 40s, which we always do. Oh, just kidding. We didn't actually do that, but we said we were going to. But yes, it's good to be back. We promise you content's going to be coming at you regularly. It's going to be coming at you fast and furious. Great movie franchise. If you haven't seen it, I know there are people out there who haven't, you got to check it out. It's a good one. But anyway, back to the topic at hand, Villanova basketball. Let's fucking get into it. That's the first fuck of the season. Let's go.
I love it. So it is Saturday. Jesus, not Saturday. It is Wednesday, September 29th. This podcast will be probably released this weekend. We just interviewed CJ Holmes from the Athletic yesterday. That'll be on the second part of the podcast. Should take up most of the podcast. Rob and I just want to take 15 minutes right now and just do like a recap of everything that's happened in the last 6 months, because it's been quite an eventful COVID-y summer of the program, and a lot's happened, and we need to cover a lot of ground. So let's make up a lot of ground really fast.
Is it even a 2020 year if it isn't COVID? I mean, I don't think so.
2020, 2021, it's all kind of the same thing. All right. So rapid fire, lightning round, what happened? Let's do it. Rob, I'm going to go first with Jeremiah Robinson Earl declares for the draft and gets drafted in the second round and goes to the Oklahoma City Thunder.
A big one that came, I think, shortly thereafter, which we'll talk a lot about, the return of two very prominent players, Colin Gillespie and Jermaine Samuels. They're back, ladies and gentlemen, and they're just getting started, sort of.
I want to talk real quick about that. Obviously, a lot has been written around first team All Big East co-player of the year, Colin Gillespie. Obviously, Jermaine as well. Who is the bigger actual return? Like which is the bigger thing to happen for Villanova basketball this year? Is there a world in which it's Jermaine?
In my mind, no. It's Colin, because he is, as you just described and noted, the reigning co-Big East player of the year. When you're returning that, that's going to be your best impact player. And the fall off from him to Justin Moore is significant. Yes, Justin Moore is a great player. Yes, we love him. But we're talking about Colin, steady playmaking, steady shooting, good decisions all around. To Justin, I'm just going to attack the hoop and take some shots more. I'll take Colin every day. Wins above replacement goes to Colin in my mind.
One person you just brought up, which is Justin Moore, because CJ Holmes just wrote an article and it was all about Justin Moore, which is a great piece. You got to read it. And obviously CJ's on in the second part of the podcast, but we didn't talk about this with him, which is that Justin Moore was like, oh, I'm working on my aggressiveness. And I was like, I don't think I really need to be a killer this year. And I'm like, I don't think you need to. I think you got that. I think we got the message in the first 2 years of you at the program. Hence, we invented the Pass the Fucking Ball Award of the Week.
Absolutely.
And so I think Justin Moore needs to be a killer. And I love that about him. And I want him to really exude that mentality. But he's got to do it in a way that makes everyone else more killerish, if you will.
Yes, 100%. I don't know who signed off on his offseason plan, but it didn't get proofread. That's for sure.
So I'm actually going to push back a little bit though on what you said. I think that the drop off from Jermaine to the next guy behind Jermaine is a little bit steep. I think the wins above replacement, if you will, I don't have the statistics to back that up, but I think the wins above replacement for Jermaine is more significant than Justin. This is a team, than Colin. To Justin. This is a team that without Colin Gillespie made the Sweet 16 and lost to the eventual national champion last year. And this is a team that lost its best front court player in Jeremiah Robinson Earl, a piece in which Jermaine Samuels is going to have to pick up some of the load around the hoop. So I'm of the opinion that Jermaine coming back was actually a bigger boon, even though Colin is a reigning Big East player of the year.
I guess we're going to have to agree to disagree. I did run the numbers. Collins wins above replacement was 4. Jermaine is 2. So I guess I'm right. Those are not real numbers, just to be clear. Like most of the numbers we throw around here, they're just not real.
A lot of fake news on the podcast.
A lot of fake news on the podcast. That's for sure.
All right. Cole Swider transfers to Syracuse.
See ya. Cole Swider's gone. Yeah.
Cole Swider's gone. In my mind, a little bit of addition by subtraction, but I don't want to hate on Cole, like as a player, as a person, hard worker, Villanova basketball guy, etc. All that great. I think he found a perfect fit in Syracuse. So I don't blame him, but I hope he does well there, except against us. So just a point I wanted to point there, but I think that we're probably better off without Cole. He did not grasp the switching defense concept well, and he just really struggled to move laterally. That's not his fault. It's just who he is. But the lateral movement was critical, and getting to play defense in a scheme where you stay in one spot seems pretty perfect for him.
I have to agree with that last point. Absolutely. All right, moving on. Cole Swider's gone. Another guy that is now, just as of taping, off the active roster. Dada is officially gone from retiring from Villanova basketball. Definitely a kind of a sad way to go out. Obviously, great contributor to the program, huge contributor to the 2018 title. Good thing is, seems like he'll be sticking around the program in some respect or another. But anyway, that's fresh off the press. Back to you.
I want to talk a little about Jay Wright. I'm going to bring up one Jay Wright thing.
Who is that?
Jay, I don't know who he is, but he is a gold medalist, having spent a significant portion of his summer in Tokyo as the assistant coach to Greg Popovich and the gold medal winning USA basketball team. Exciting stuff there for Jay Wright.
It is indeed. The Jay Wright narrative and biography just keeps getting stronger. All right, so moving on from Jay Wright, we had kind of an interesting offseason for a number of our guys in that they had to deal with a number of car accidents, concussions, like some other recent injuries too, a whole host of things. We had a couple guys were in a car accident. Keep me honest on the names, on the players involved. They were dealing with concussions for a while. Brian Antoine just recently diagnosed with patella tendon issue, so he's going to be out for a while. So while it was nice to be able to have everybody back practicing this summer, doesn't seem like we had a lot of continuity that we're going to be able to totally benefit from coming in on day one. Is it going to be better than 2020? Absolutely. Would you have loved to have the whole team there the whole summer for all the practices? Yes, of course. And it doesn't look like we've quite got that this year.
Yeah, it is interesting. You got to feel for Antoine having another injury setback. It doesn't seem like it's going to be anything season ending or requiring surgery, but perhaps there's a chemistry benefit there because it gives some other guys an opportunity to get some minutes early. We're very loaded in the guard wing space this year. So, maybe that gives another guy an opportunity to get some minutes. The other thing too, that you didn't mention, but I'm sure is part of your list is Caleb Daniels got COVID back in last January And we learned over the summer that he had suffered from some long COVID symptoms and was dealing with that, which the program now says he has since fully cleared, and he's clear from and is back to full strength. So that's big. Obviously, Colin didn't have a full summer because half of his summer was spent recovering. Now he's back and says he's 100%. You mentioned Brandon Slater. There's concussion. There's car accidents. Crazy summer there.
Really is.
It
Super
really
weird.
is just like a crazy turn of events. I don't understand how all of this stuff happened. Sticking with what happened, though, this is an underrated thing that took place. Kyle Neptune takes the head coaching position, obviously had to, takes a head coaching position at Fordham and is now the coach of the Fordham Rams. That is a big hit to our coaching program.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was one of the questions that came in our mailbag. So you want to hit that now, or do you want to hit that when we go through our mailbag, Chris?
I mean, we can hit it now. We could just talk on like, what's the impact and what was the exact question?
I think it was like, how big a loss is Kyle Neptune?
Yeah. So I think a lot, but I'm not sure it's going to be felt as much this year. Reason I say that is we're returning a ton of senior leadership. All the guys have been in the program. They kind of know the drill. So I feel like the people who are going to miss having Kyle Neptune around are the underclassmen. We have a big freshman class. They don't seem, I'm like, and this is another question that we'll get into, but I don't think this is going to have, they're going to have a huge impact on our on the court performance this year, other than, you know, how well they help the other guys in practice. So with that being said, I think that Kyle Neptune having him here would have been a big help to those guys. But the other guys have spent multiple years in the program and I think are now seasoned well enough to know the drill. So, you know, that's the benefit of having Colin and Jermaine. Jay Wright kind of gets fortunate there by having Colin and Jermaine and Justin and all these guys who have been in the program for so long, be able to kind of keep that continuity going and know how the program is supposed to be run, even without him or Kyle Neptune for a significant portion of the summer.
Yeah, and I think that's all well and good, but there's a difference between having a player who's a leader and having a coach who's a leader. And Kyle Neptune was the last remaining assistant from the 2016 team. So there's a ton of continuity there. And like, we're talking about two very different things. Like, yeah, Jake can call the plays and he knows he's got smart players on the floor who know the system. Like, assistant coaches do a lot more than, and obviously do a lot different things than executing on the floor what the players are doing. And I have to imagine part of that, the administrative burden, part of that actual team management side of things is going to be different for Jay this year. And I'm guessing that he's going to have to be spending more of his time with his assistant coaches than he did previously, because he could probably hand off a lot of that duty to Kyle Neptune, and prior to that to Ashley Howard and Baker Dunleavy before that as well too. So those were guys that he had clearly trusted. It's not to say that we don't have competent assistant coaches this year, but they're just a little bit earlier on in their coaching journey. And I have to imagine Jay's going to have to spend more time and more mind share with those guys than he would in previous years. And I do think that will come to bear on the season at some point in one way or another, whether you see it on the court or not. Things are going to be shifting in the background.
And to your point, Jay was, as we just alluded to, spent a significant portion of his summer in Tokyo, not around the guys, leaving it to George Halkovich and some of the other assistants to help kind of run the show. So yeah, I'm interested to see. And on top of everything else we mentioned, that inconsistent summer where some of the guys had, you know, fits and starts with everything going on. You know, what is the reality of the team that we see on the court day one when we face off with Mount St. Mary's? Probably going to beat them up pretty good, but second game is at 11:30 p.m. on a Friday against UCLA.
Yeah,
that's going to be an interesting matchup real early in the season against a team that was a Final Four team.
absolutely. All right, well, let's get into, we've got a good interview coming up with CJ. So let's jump into, should we hit some mailbag questions?
Yeah, let's hit the mailbag. One final thing that I just wanted to hit was Jay Wright made the Hall of Fame, which I think
Pretty good.
We shouldn't have glossed over that one. Too bad, but I think that was worth mentioning.
Just a minor detail at this point. It was real mere formality.
It was.
All right, so let's jump into the mailbags. We got a lot of great questions actually. One of the ones I liked right off the bat, it said, "Will Jay finally bring the suits back?" And I think my follow-on question: are you a suit Jay Wright or are you a tracksuit Jay Wright? What do you think?
I think it's tech pants is the technical term.
Tracksuit, tech pants, whatever. I'm clearly not in the know. I'm obviously not calling them tech pants. So
look, I'm a suit Jay Wright guy. I think he looks great on the sidelines. I think you'll see him dress down a little bit more. I think he'll find opportunities to do that dress down look a little bit. But I think we need Jay back in the suits. I think there's something that's like, there's a normalcy to that. I think that makes people feel at home. That makes people feel safe. And I think we need that in 2021, 2022, Villanova.
That's what I was clamoring for. Jay Wright in a suit's going to make me feel safe.
That's
anyway,
right. That's right. We need some safe.
We're in a new normal right now. I think you're going to see more tech pants, track suits across the board this year in college basketball. I do not think that trend is going away. While Jay looks great in a suit, a lot of coaches do not. And for that reason, I think there are going to be a lot of coaches reaching out and saying, "Hey, Jay, you mind if we dress down this game?" And he's going to say, "Oh, yeah, I'm a good coach. I like to make everybody happy. We'll do some tech pants today," whatever the fuck you want to call them. It's all good. So I think we're going to see a little bit more of that. And I'm okay with that because 2021 is all about embracing that. So go for it. Be a trendsetter, Jay.
Does Jay have to wear masks on the sidelines this year? Because he was pretty bad at that last year.
I mean, I hope not. It was an absolute joke last year. Just take it off to yell. I'm like, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. So hopefully not.
All right. We got a couple questions around recruiting. And here's what we know. We know that Mark Armstrong, who's kind of a combo guard, committed several weeks back, which is a big get for four-star recruit. Yeah. Kind of climbing up the ranks too, by the way, like as that happened. I forget exactly what number he was at when around the time he committed, but then ESPN came out right away and he was like top 30 all of a sudden. Yeah. So big time get there. And then Brendan Housen, and this one's interesting because he's from Texas and we were not in on him early. Most of the guys you talk to, they say, "Oh, Villanova just made me feel like they were family." And I'd known them forever. And what have you. No, Villanova swooped in late with this guy. He's a sharp shooter, and they swooped in late and they said, "Hey, we'd love you to come here," etc. And he is just absolutely bought in. He was just like, "Yeah, I want to go 100%." And I think that is a pretty damn good sign for the program. And especially you mentioned, are we going to miss Kyle Neptune? One of his biggest things was on recruiting, and being able to use our program and our name strength to go get some guys that we previously relied so heavily on our assistant coaches on. Not to say we didn't for Housen either, but that's a huge benefit to our ability to keep this program rolling.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely a nice start to 2022 recruiting. Hopefully some more guys will fall in line as well, but definitely just continuing to reload with a few guys that, really check a lot of the boxes with what we're looking for.
Look out
from a recruit perspective.
Look out. It could be a great day to be a Wildcat pretty soon. And of course, I'm talking about a recruit named Cam Whitmore. A lot of the crystal balls, I'm reading it online. A lot of crystal balls say Villanova is the choice. I'm interested to see what happens. I think we're going to find out pretty soon. Cross your fingers, but
the fingers are crossed.
I'm hoping.
All right. So that's enough on recruiting the youngins, if you will. All right. What do we got next?
I think we stick a little bit with youngins, the recent recruits, the now freshmen.
Yeah.
We kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. Will a freshman impact our ability to win games? I'm going to go with no.
I'm going to go with hard no. Basically zero impact on our games. I think it's going to be tough, and we'll get into this more with CJ later. I think it's going to be tough for most of these freshmen to even crack the rotation. Different story if Colin and Jermaine didn't come back, but they did. So we've just reloaded. And frankly, if I'm one of the freshmen, I'm probably sitting there saying, ooh, I thought I was going to get a couple more minutes because they were leaving. So that's definitely going to shake things up. I think you'll probably see one, maybe two of them get some regular minutes, but I don't see those minutes being in crunch time. I don't see a huge breakout guy there like a Sadiq Bey who's filling the role. That's just not what we're going to need the freshmen to do this year.
I tend to agree. If any of those guys show like a lot of toughness, so like a Josh Hartness to them, a Sadiq Bayness to them, etc., you could see someone break in. If I had to guess, those guys would be one of the Nana Njoku's or the.
That's true, actually. Yeah, Njoku's good, especially with Dada coming out. That's a fair point.
Trey Patterson has been here for half a year, and then Jordan Longino. I mean, I'm interested to see what happens with these guys. But
all right, that was a terrible answer. You just like contradicted yourself 100 times.
No,
terrible.
No, hard answer. No, they are not going to have a big impact on their ability to win games.
Stick to it. Good. Perfect. Love it. All right. What do we have? What do we have next? Where will Nova rank in the AP preseason poll? And my answer, I'll take this and say, I'll take it a little bit further too. I think the first preseason poll, 5-ish, something like that. I think even the early weeks, it's going to be 5, 10. We'll probably drop to 15 at some point. We'll pick up some silly losses along the way. And I think we'll end up sorting out probably in that 5 to 10 range by the end of the year too.
It's interesting. I tend to agree with where you start. I think 4 or 5. I think a lot of Villanova fans might be thinking, "Oh, top 3, here we go." Like, I think the media is going to find reasons, some of the bigger programs to, like the UCLA's of the world, to jump and be in that top 3. So I think we're going to be 4 or 5, if I had to guess. Then I do agree that we're going to take some lumps in the non-conference schedule, which will probably knock us down a peg, maybe just outside the top 10. But the Big East is very winnable this year in terms of like winning a ton of games, like 18-2. We got to see how the season plays out, but 18-2 is not like a crazy suggestion right now.
No,
16-4 is not a crazy suggestion. You just rack up 16 wins over the course of like the 2.5 months of the Big East, and you're going to end up in the top 5 just because like you're going to have like 5-6 losses going into March. So like final AP poll, like 5-6 loss team in the Big East with the out of conference schedule that we had probably keeps us in the top 5, 6, 7. So where do we end up? Like probably a 1 or a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. I think it's just kind of like a given that's kind of how it should go. Of course, you could lose some dumb games, but with the experience level of this team, like any dumb loss is a really terrible loss. Like even more than like other Villanova teams of yesteryear, where like, okay, but you had to integrate some new guys and some guys didn't show up all the time. Like, no, there's no excuse. Like 4 of the guys playing have played a ton of minutes in this program. Like they got to win all the easy games.
Absolutely. All right.
You can't just like lose to Temple or some bullshit like that. Like that's not okay this year.
Yeah, it's very true. All right, I think that hit most of our mailbag topics, and some of them I think we'll sprinkle in a little bit with some of our conversation with CJ. So we love the mailbag. We love the enthusiasm we were getting from the fans. We'll try to be doing it more often. Even if we're not doing it, definitely just keep hitting us up. Give us the ideas. Tell us what you want to hear. We will respond to it, and we'll make it a great pod. Give the people what they want.
That's right. So obviously, this is just a primer. On the flip side of the break here, we're talking to CJ Holmes. He's a writer for The Athletic. He's the beat reporter for the full Philadelphia Big Five, but he does a ton of work around Villanova. He knows where his bread is buttered. He spends a lot of time with the Villanova program. He's great. He came around the program starting last year in the COVID year, and the amount of inroads that he's made so quickly is really impressive. And I think he's a real up-and-comer writer. And I'm really excited to have him on the beat, and I hope he's with us for a long time. So we got him on the pod. We've been talking to him over the course of last year. We weren't able to find the right scheduling moment for him. We got him start the season. He's going to help us do a full primer for the season to come on the second part of the podcast. In the meantime, looking for advertisers. If you are a business around Villanova or around places where Villanova students go, we would love to have an advertisement and put them on the podcast. We do not make money right now. We have to cover some additional expenses that we just picked up. We would love to have advertisements. In addition to that, I'd ask our listeners, we will be coming out with a donation page. If you want to donate to the podcast, all the donation monies are going to go obviously first to covering all expenses. Rob and I would love to pocket a couple bucks from the podcast, but that's not really what we're in it for. This is a hobby. We love this. We love Villanova basketball. We love bringing you great Villanova content, and we have some expenses to pay. So that's the only reason why we're really asking for the donations, and more will come out of that through our social media pages. Check out Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at the Full 40 for more information. Okay, Rob, I think that's all we had on the first half of the podcast. Stick with us, CJ Holmes, after the break, and 2 or 3 more episodes before the season tips in early November. So stick with us at the Full 40. Thanks for listening, and catch you on the flip side of the break. See you later.
Back. It's Chris from the Full 40 with Chris and Rob. We have with us a very special guest, CJ Holmes. CJ, welcome to the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, y'all.
And so, little background on CJ. CJ is a writer for The Athletic. He is the beat reporter for Villanova. And he has done a great job in the last year plus, despite kind of just working through the pandemic. Obviously, I loved his text throughout all last year, checking into work, which is just basically like looking at his television. But he was super pumped when he got to go to a couple of Villanova games at the Finn. So CJ, it's great to have you, and I'm sure you're looking forward to actually covering Villanova in person this year.
Yeah, I really am. Last year was definitely an experience, having to move cross country in the middle of a pandemic. I'm not just a Villanova beat writer now, I'm a Big Five beat writer, and having headway into 5 different programs with no in-person access was definitely a tough task, but I hung in there. I feel like I learned a lot, not only about Villanova basketball, but Philadelphia college basketball as a whole. And I'm just hoping that this year we can get back to some resemblance of normalcy, and I can do the job the way it's meant to be done.
And what's crazy about the Big Five thing is that there are 5 schools in the same general vicinity that couldn't be more different.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I haven't been able to get out to a LaSalle game yet. I believe that's the only Big Five school where I did not attend a home game last year. But going from up on the main line at Villanova to down at Temple to and Penn. Haven't been to a game at Penn yet. Haven't been in the Palestra. Haven't stepped foot in that building yet. So I'm excited about that.
Ooh, that's a good one.
But just from the schools I did get to attend home games last year, Villanova, Temple, and St. Joe's, they're all very different. When you're hanging around campus, they're all like different vibes, and they're all special and unique in their own way. I remember the Athletic asked me, so what do you want to do now that the Athletic Arizona is no longer a thing? And I was like, hey, I'd love to cover their NBA. So, and then a day or two later, they're like, all right, well, that's cool and all, but you're going to go cover the Big Five.
It's basically the same thing.
So, I was like, which schools are in the Big Five? And then we're like, Villanova, LaSalle, Penn, St. Joe's, and Temple. I didn't even know Villanova was in the Philadelphia area.
Wow.
It's like Auburn.
Wow.
Right? It's like Auburn.
I blame that on Villanova. I don't blame it on you.
That's true.
I don't blame you for that. I really want to just know, like, you spend time in the Auburn program and you spend time now, obviously, covering Villanova and the Big Five in general, but just Villanova podcast. So, the rest of the Big Five can go to hell. Tell me a little bit, like, what was different, or what have you seen that's different, whatever it may be, same about the two programs?
So much. So
Really?
much. Not even sure where to start. I was at Auburn, I straddled the two sides of two different regimes. I played my first 2 years with Coach Tony Barbie, and I played my last year with Bruce Pearl. I didn't play my senior year because I wanted to focus on journalism. My first 2 years of Auburn, from an on-court standpoint, I mean, they were rough. At times, I felt like the team didn't have a lot of buy-in. We had guys, who had their own agendas. We had guys who weren't taking care of business off the court. Even though I was a walk-on, I can say that, even I could have done more to contribute to the success of our program. Because here's the thing, y'all. Every college basketball team in the country, especially at the Division I level, has talent. All of these guys were dominant in high school. A handful of these guys were highly rated recruits, but the difference between the teams that have success and the teams that experience failure, it's the little things. It's putting up extra shots when no one's watching. It's taking care of your business in the classroom. It's carrying yourself with pride on and off the court. And I'm not saying we didn't have guys in the program at the time I was in there that weren't doing that, but it just wasn't enough. Even with that, in Coach Pearl's first year, we still struggled because you can't change a culture overnight. A culture is developed over the course of years.
Sometimes I would say probably just winning. You need to prove that it works, right? Like sometimes you need to pull off a couple wins.
And, although I haven't spent too much intimate time with the Villanova program, from everything I've seen so far and everything I've heard, that's what it is. That's what they've built. That's what Jay Wright's built on the main line. Guys come there and they know they're going to be held to a certain standard. Guys are unselfish. Guys know they're going to play a certain way no matter who's brought in the latest recruiting class. Guys just think and act a certain way. And, that's why Jay Wright's been able to have so much success at Villanova, because he runs a tight ship and there's no room for deviation. When I look at a program like Villanova, I'm a beat writer, right? Gotta be fair and unbiased. But I mean, I think it's undeniable that it's an example of everything that's right in college basketball. Over the last, couple of days alone, I've talked to, a couple recruits and I've talked to recruits over the past year, and they all say the same thing. So, when Villanova goes out there and they have that success, I'm not surprised in the slightest. The difference between the bottom dwellers and the elite is consistency in character. It's consistency in work ethic. It's consistency and focus.
Do you have to go through Jay Wright media training when you start covering the team? Because I feel like, to Chris's point earlier about you getting Villanova, I feel like I heard like Jay on my Zoom call right now. That was great.
Look, man, if I had $1 for every time a Villanova player said, "Yeah, man, we're just going to go out there and play Villanova basketball for a full 40 minutes, yeah, I'd be a very rich man."
Yes, absolutely.
Hence the name of the podcast.
No training here from Villanova. I'm just speaking facts. If it wasn't true, trust me, I'd be the first one to refute it. But the evidence is undeniable. I've talked to so many people in and around the program over the past year. It's all consistent. I've talked to people outside of the program, and it's all consistent.
So let's transition, because we've done a lot about that. Let's talk about this year of Villanova basketball. And first things first, you said that we were going to lose 2 games in the non-conference schedule. I mean, come on. What's up with
predictions, man? Like, like, listen, don't get me wrong. I have faith in this year's Villanova team, but I can't sit here and say, when you look at how treacherous that non-conference schedule is, and knowing that sometimes it takes this team to get kicked in the ass a little bit to, make the right adjustments and, get it going a little bit. I mean, I just don't think they can get through this non-conference schedule and skate. And that wouldn't be the worst thing.
I'm with you on
Better
this.
to lose early than later.
Yeah,
I think Chris and I are on different pages here. I'm with you.
No, I'm giving you a hard time, and I want to get into the non-conference schedule in a little bit because you wrote a great article on that, and I wanted to just give you a little bit of a hard time, but it's hard to not to point to a couple losses in the non-con. I think we're on the same page, generally speaking. I got to look deeper at it. I got to think about it a little bit more. I got to read up on what happens in October as we go into as we lead into the season. But generally speaking, I think that you're probably on the right track, and I would probably say that would be a good thing. Jay's teams generally over the years, 15 years of following the program, always do better after losing a couple games early on. But maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't have lost. Jay seems to be a good coach out of losses. But we'll get into that. I want to talk first about very first point that you wrote, like the question of the day for the Villanova team this year is what is going to happen with the front court. And I really couldn't agree more. Obviously, you could argue that there was a deficit in the front court last year, and that's with having an All-American in Jeremiah Robinson Earl on the roster, who then went on to get drafted in the NBA draft. And everyone talked about Mr. Fundamental. I think Steve Lavin called him. He was just always just a guy who did everything right on the court and off the court. Hard worker, great moves, really had a lot to his game. Maybe in some ways not a traditional front court player, like a full front court player, maybe more of a 3 or 4 in the NBA. But losing him, where do you even start? So I'd like to just get a little bit more of your feel. Can this team even be a Final Four team, an Elite 8 team, let alone a national championship team with the dearth of depth in the front court?
I think so. Because, mainly I just think Villanova's backcourt is just that good. It's among the best in the country. Right. You got the reigning Big East player of the year coming back in Colin Gillespie. You got a guy like Caleb Daniels, who's a stud at Tulane. Now in his second year with Villanova, you're expecting him to take another step. You got Justin Moore, who I think is oozing, all conference potential this year. I think, if Justin plays his cards right, he might be gone after this year. I'm talking maybe a first round talent, right? And then, we saw a lot of Chris Archidiakono at the end of last year. With Colin back, I'm not sure, what his role will be this year. But, I think, and, a lot of fans have given me so much crap, in the comment section for this, with my stories, but I think he's solid. I mean, this kid is on scholarship for a reason. Jay Wright brought him here for a reason. And I don't think it was to just gather dust on the bench for 4 years. I think that Chris proved that at the very least, he can be a serviceable point guard, in the Big East. The kid came in there, he played with confidence, he took care of the basketball, made scrappy plays defensively. That's what you love to see. But, the big question mark is Brian Antoine. We just talked to Jay Wright today. Another injury for Brian, patella tendon, out indefinitely. Although, the way Coach Wright was kind of pay attention to his mannerisms, I don't think that this is going to be an injury that keeps Brian out, too long. I'm just figuring he'll be back for the season opener. But, that's a guy with so much untapped potential. A former McDonald's All-American. Go on YouTube, look at his highlights. This dude is jumping out the gym, running in transition, knocking down threes, dunking on dudes' heads.
Yeah.
And that untapped potential, when healthy, is scary. And he's another guy who now has he's a guy who finally has a full offseason under his belt. And, if he can stay healthy, that's the big thing with him.
Yeah.
I mean, he's another guy where the sky's the limit. So with all that said, I think Villanova is going to be just fine in the backcourt.
I got to harp on this a little bit. I got to push on this a little bit more. So look, Villanova, for as long as Jay Wright's been there, has had excellence in the backcourt, just absolute excellence. You think back to 06, and then all the way until the most recent dynasty that they've created here in the Big East. And the backcourt's always been good. But the difference maker, the teams that broke through to the Final Four, in 09, you had Dante Cunningham. In 2016, you had Daniel Oshefu and Darryl Reynolds. D-Ray, please don't get mad at us. We called you out. And then in 18, you had Omari Spellman and Eric Paschal. The teams that broke through made it to the Final Four, made it to the national championship, won the title, had an elite, not even just a serviceable, an elite big man up front. So I'm going to push on you a little bit and say, how can Villanova overcome that? Do the players that we have on the roster, the Dixon, the Njokus, do the other guys have what it takes to be that role and fill that void?
I think it's possible, but no one player can do it alone, right? It's going to have to be production by committee. Starting with a guy like Jermaine Samuels, fifth-year senior. Been there, done that. He's seen it all. He's going to be relied upon heavily for this team, not only on the glass, but, to anchor them defensively in the post. He's going to be relied on to, get leaned up against and, having a wall up against some of these, big men in the Big East this season. And I think he's proven that he's more than capable, right? But Jermaine can't do it alone. From all the conversations I've had with, coaches this offseason, the guy they are expecting to take the biggest leap is Eric Dixon, former 4-star recruit, top 100 kid. And, a lot of people look at Eric and they're like, well, he didn't play much last year. He looked confused out there at times. And overall, he just wasn't all that productive. And I agree. I can't deny that. But at the same time, I can't deny his natural gifts. The kid's a unicorn. He brings a skill set that no other big on the Villanova roster brings. I don't want to compare him to an Eric Paschal because Eric was much more, had more perimeter skills.
Eric was just an athletic. He's insane.
Dixon can step out though. He can hit at least a mid-range jumper with some consistency. And he took a number of threes last year in his limited playing time. So he's not afraid to shoot it.
And that's what I'm saying. The kid can step out. His footwork is good enough to be a mismatch at the offensive end. When I think of the way Villanova likes to incorporate the pick and roll into their offense, Eric is ideal for that. The guy can roll to the rim. He's big and brawny. He can finish over the trees, or he can pick and pop, knock down a three. I think that he has the ability to give Villanova a level of versatility. I don't want to say on par with Jeremiah Robinson Earl. It's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying he can bring a lot of the same things to the table, right? But it's all based on how well Eric developed this offseason. From everything I've heard, Eric has had a phenomenal offseason. He's got stronger. He's dropped some more of that baby fat. And he's a lot more in tune with, the Villanova program and what they're trying to accomplish out there on the court. And when people kind of, point to his lapses that last year, why he couldn't stay on the court, I think that has a lot to do with it. Yeah, he was with the program for a year, as a redshirt. Developing, right? But sitting out a redshirt season and being thrown into game action, that's tough, especially considering when the entire offseason was wiped out because of COVID. Eric has now had a full offseason under his belt. Like I said, he's stronger. He's playing with more confidence from everything I've heard. And I think if Villanova is going to make up for the loss of Jeremiah Robinson Earl's production, he's going to have to be a big reason why. Another guy who's going to have to take another step forward, obviously, is Brandon Slater, a guy who's been around the program for a while. I was talking with Coach Halkovich a couple of weeks ago, and he said, when you talk about that offseason wiped out from COVID, that probably hurt Brandon the most out of everyone on the roster. So, again, another guy who's even more familiar now, another year in the program, who showed flashes last year that he can be a big time contributor. I mean, those dunks he was throwing down at the end of the year, I was just like, yo, where did that come from? Where's that been? Right.
Yeah.
But, offensive side, where Brandon's going to make his impact is at the defensive end,
Yeah.
just like last year. When Brandon Slater came off the bench last year in extended minutes, I mean, he just injected life into that Villanova defense. I mean, the guy's flying around, he's sliding, wasn't blocking that many shots, but he's changing the trajectory of shots. And, they're going to need his defensive energy too.
Yeah, I think that's a really good segue. Like, that was one of the things we wanted to talk about too. Obviously, defense for most of the year wasn't our strength. And it's kind of interesting. Obviously, Colin going down is a huge kind of net loss to the team. But defensively, it shifted some stuff around. And, you put players who are, I'll say, call it what it is, like probably a little bit more athletic than Colin on the floor. And you could point to a few things towards the end of the year where you said, maybe the defense is a little stronger, potentially without Colin on the floor. Now Colin's back, obviously, hopefully he's fully recovered. Maybe he ends up a half step slower. I don't know. Hopefully that's not the case, but regardless, like, we've got to get stronger on defense. How does Jay do that? How does this team improve defensively from where they were last year?
Well, at the end of the day, if you're unathletic on the perimeter, you're unathletic on the perimeter. The only way to counter that is with strong team defense, with everyone out there on the perimeter working on the same line, the same accord. After, some of the losses last year, namely Creighton and St. Joe's on the road and Creighton on the road. If I remember correctly, Jay Wright kind of just cited like, hey, we didn't have a full offseason. We didn't really have time to, do those defensive drills and double down on that, as we usually do in the past. And I believe him. The guy hasn't really given me any reason not to, since I've been on this beat. And, again, with this team having a full off season to build that chemistry, to be able to, double down on those defensive concepts and be on the same line, even with essentially the same personnel on the perimeter, I think they're going to be much improved. Simply because they've had more time to work on it. Once you get into season, you don't really have time to fix those defensive miscues. It's far too late at that point. At that point, you are what you are, and you just got to keep rolling. Villanova's not going to have that disadvantage this offseason. They have more time to work together. They've been together, and I think that cohesion will show.
The defense is like such a critical point, and I'm glad Rob brought that up. If you look at Ken Palm, our defense was kind of like, I don't know, 60th. I'm guessing here. I'm not looking at Ken Palm directly, but I think it averaged out to about 60th with like a sharp improvement at the end of the season, which coincided. We can say coincidentally, causation, correlation, whatever it may be, with Colin going down. I am of the perspective that we have to, that Jay's going to probably take a really strong view on defense this year, that maybe fans will have to be patient on the offensive end, that this team might get it done ugly early. And then that'll pave way to do better offensively late. The only team that I can think of, the only two teams, that I can think of that were just absolute offensive juggernauts from day one that had success in the NCAA tournament under Jay's reign, were 2006 and 2018. And those teams just were so good offensively. And then they were able to get there defensively, like especially the 18 team kind of just like figured it out defensively late. They kind of turned on the Jets at the end. And I think a lot of people hope that the 19 and 20 and 21 iterations of the team would do the same. Sometimes they did a little bit, but not the same, not the level that they needed to. I do think that team defense is going to be so critical for this team. How do they switch? Do they get the switching early? They're bringing everyone back. The switching defense has to work. Now, I'm curious because this dovetails into our next topic, which is kind of talking a little bit about the rotation and the minutes allocation. Last year, Jay started, unsurprisingly, to anyone who follows the program. Colin, Justin, Jermaine, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, and Caleb Daniels. And if you follow Jay Wright at all over the last 15 years plus 20 years of him being the head coach of Villanova, he always values experience. And even though Caleb had been with the program for 2 years, but was a junior, at the redshirt junior at the time, like that wasn't a surprise. As we got towards the end of the year, though, there were times where Antoine found his way into the starting lineup. Obviously, when Colin and Justin were down, it was, it got even more hokey than that. What do you think? Does Slater stay in the starting lineup because he brings that extra level, extra gear on defense? Or does Jay still feel the need to kind of go Caleb? Not that Caleb's a bad defender. He's foul happy, but
just a tad.
Just a tad foul happy. But does Jay kind of preference Brandon and kind of use Caleb as a microwave off the bench? What are you thinking about that?
I don't think that's going to be the case, right? I feel like Caleb's experience, like you said, and the threat of him offensively, offsets, some of the things Brandon may, bring to the table in terms of starting. I guess just like simply put, you want your best 5 guys out there on the floor to start the game. If you bring Caleb off the bench, then, what does that do to, the minutes of someone like Antoine, right? If you ask me right now, I think the starting lineup next year is going to be obviously Colin Gillespie, obviously Justin Moore, obviously Jermaine Samuels, and then I'm going to go with Caleb Daniels and Eric Dixon. Despite Caleb's shortcomings, he was still a starter all season long on a team that won. How many games did they win last year?
It was
a large
19.
number.
Yeah. I think it was like 19 because it was a weird year.
On a team that won a bunch of games, it was his, much like Eric, it was his first year, playing with the program. And there's some things he had to figure out. But again, here's another guy who's had an entire offseason to figure those things out.
Well, in his case, you said that he didn't have a full offseason. He had some concussion issues. He had some COVID related long COVID issues. And so he had a little bit to work through before he got fully ripe for the offseason.
Yeah, he had some things to work through. But again, like what Coach Halkovich was saying, another year in the program, means another year more experience. Jay Wright values experience. Why would he put a senior on the bench?
Yep. I mean, look, if I had a gun to my head, I vote the same. I would vote the same way you did. Trying to find a reason why he might start Slater instead. Obviously, he's not going to mess with Colin, Jermaine, and Justin. Those are 3 obvious.
I don't know. I did hear a rumor that Colin might come off the bench. Just kind of a down year for him. Just don't think it's good for the program.
But no, in all seriousness, I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. I'm just trying to find a reason why it might be different. Maybe he would preference defense, etc. Maybe a matchup situation could change things. But obviously, then then if you wanted to go with a bigger lineup, Slater over Daniels would be the pick. But I mean, look, I get it. I think a couple things about Daniels. I think the Villanova fan base got really, really over the top with him, like at least on Twitter, over the top, aggressively mad at Caleb Daniels. The kid gave nothing but like 130% every game, sometimes to his detriment, with some of those offensive fouls. But that, and I mean, Rob and I happen to have met him. He's like maybe the nicest guy in the universe, on top of all of that. So like program guy, gets it, wants to be nothing but, great for the program and play great. Obviously, in order to be effective, his shot has to go down. But he brings a lot to the table. He's not bad defensively. He's athletically gifted. I'm hoping that they find ways to involve him a little bit more, even when his shot isn't hitting. But I'm just calling out the opportunity potentially for Jay to go a little bit more of a defensive, bigger look. And Slater doesn't lose an inch on quickness and speed and athleticism. So, I just pointing that out. I will say, if Slater's offense really develops this year, then I think by the
And
end
we're
of
having a
the year,
different conversation.
We're having a different conversation.
And just one more thing on Caleb. Like you said, the guy works hard. He plays hard. He's a person of character. When I look at some of the issues he had last season, coaches said that COVID affected him, in a different way than did anybody else on the team. And, basically when I just look at Caleb, I see the issues in his game as quick fixes. You can cut down on turnovers. You can, work on your body control and picking and choosing your spots in order to prevent offensive fouls. All those things are correctable. And when they are corrected, I mean, this kid could be a beast.
Oh, yeah. I mean, early on in the season, we thought, oh my God, like, holy crap, we hit the effing lottery with this kid. So if he can bring November, December Caleb, I mean, you want to talk about something that will immediately increase this team's title chances. That's it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we talked a lot about the upperclassmen. We've got a lot of interest. I mean, another great recruiting class Jay's bringing in this year. One person who's kind of not a freshman is Trey Patterson, amongst the others as well. Curious, who stands out to you? Who do you think is going to be really the one to watch? We know Jay already runs a really tight lineup, and we just ran through 6 or 7 guys who are going to take up the bulk of the minutes. Like, who do you think cracks the lineup? Like, who are you excited about?
I'm excited about Trey Patterson, the freshman who's not really a freshman. He got the opportunity to arrive at Villanova early, get on campus, be with the team, learn the culture, learn, the ins and outs of, what it takes to be a Villanova basketball player. And I think, it's put him ahead of the curve, when compared to his true freshman, counterparts. There's a lot of love of Trey, 6'7", can play inside and out. Watched a lot of his tape at Rutgers prep. He can shoot a little bit, plays with energy and aggression. And, when we were talking about, how can Villanova fill the void, in the paint this season? I mean, he's probably going to be a big reason why. From there, I would say because of those paint issues, a player like Nana Njoku has a chance to get on the floor early too. Now, like I said, he's a true freshman. He hasn't had the, same kind of experiences as Trey so far. And, we all know how Coach Wright values experience. So, I don't think that he'll go that deep in the bench unless he absolutely has to. But if that is what it ends up being, I mean, Njoku, he's huge. He's a man-child. He eats up space. He has a high motor. Was one of the best rebounders in high school basketball. And for a team that it's going to need some interior help defensively and on the glass, if you got to play him, you got to play him. Angelo Breezy, it was funny. I was watching this film, and I swear I was like, this is Colin Gillespie's film. Like, what is this? Like, I thought this was Angelo Breezy, but he brings a lot of the same things to the table as Colin. Let's be real. Jay Wright has a mold. The guy has a mold. You
got to think that there's probably no way he cracks the lineup though at this point. I mean, we're just too deep in the backcourt.
I don't.
Is he a redshirt candidate?
I believe so. I don't think. I think it would be unwise to burn a year of eligibility this year. Especially when the backcourt is so deep, and then you got the if you need an extra point guard, you got Chris, right? Totally. But I love Angelo's game. He's a Northern VA kid like me. Played against a lot of the same high schools. Back in the day. Well, for me back in the day, for him in the more recent past. But big time shooter, takes care of the basketball, has a level of toughness and grit that you find common in a lot of Villanova recruits. And I think that fans are going to be happy as he continues to develop. He is the point guard of the future. In terms of a dark horse, Trey Longino, right? He's a sniper, snipers are at a premium in college basketball. If you can prove you can handle the physicality of the college game and knock that thing down at a high level and hold your ground defensively, you might steal some minutes here and there, especially, if guys like Caleb and Brian Antoine are, struggling a little bit, right? Longino, 6'5", unlimited range, former football player, so former quarterback, so he's cerebral. I don't expect him to play much, but later in the season, Villanova gets in some injury issues in the backcourt. With his size and his toughness and shooting ability, I wouldn't be surprised if he can steal some minutes, maybe.
I'm wondering that too. And it's funny, one of our readers or listeners, sorry, I should say, who I trust his opinion quite a bit. And I was also thinking this a little bit myself. I don't know, like Longino's body type is just general, like demeanor about him, just has like a toughness and a grit to the way he is. He also seems like in a way similar to like Bay, kind of has a chip on his shoulder that he wasn't like the most heralded guy coming into this class. There's a little bit about him, like Bay kind of came in as a dark horse and then ended up being like the best of that class by far. Like,
yeah, that was wild, actually.
Does Longino have a little bit of that in him?
Maybe. I mean, size-wise, stature, etc. I don't know. I'm getting a lot of heart vibes.
I was going to say you're giving Sadiq Bey was a physical specimen coming in as well, too, which I don't know. Longino's he's definitely played quarterback, so he's got that physicality, but that Sadiq Bey build is something else.
I like Longino a lot, but when I look at this class, I'm still impartial to Trey Patterson just because I think he's more versatile. He can do a little bit more, play inside and out. And he probably has the quickest line, to the starting lineup in the next couple of years, I would say, maybe.
Real quick follow-up on that. How much of a difference does having that like semester or half a semester make? As a former player, you've been through that, like you've seen that. Is that a big leg up or a little leg up?
Huge leg up. Like when I saw that Trey was enrolling early, I was like, wow, that's going to do wonders for this kid, especially in a program like Villanova, because when you first arrive on campus that summer before your freshman year begins, it's a whirlwind, man. It's still not even the true taste of what it's going to be like. Over the summer, you get your individual workouts in, you scrimmage, you take your summer classes. But when students arrive on campus during the fall, it's such a huge adjustment period. You're so many new faces, having to, make it on time to classes, having to get used to full practices when NCAA allows you to work longer, when the NCAA allows coaches to work longer with their teams. And the upperclassmen are looking at the freshmen like, oh man, these guys got to learn the ropes. We already know what you got to do. And it kind of, in a way, it slows you down from a team development standpoint. So with Trey already, if Trey being able to come on campus early, to experience those things early, to be immersed in Villanova's system and culture early, it just puts him light years ahead of the game. So when he arrived on campus a couple weeks ago, he already knew what it was going to be like. He already knew what to expect. He was basically, I would imagine, moving and behaving like a veteran. Right. And I think in the long run, it's going to do nothing but good for him.
I'm excited to see, just excited to see a picture or video of Patterson, because I have to imagine that on top of all of that, 9 months of Shaq Fit has got to have a big impact on him. But I want to touch one more thing. I want to talk schedule. I want to touch on one more thing about this team. I can't remember a team that is as deep as this Villanova team in terms of just sheer number of scholarship capable of being on the court athletes as this team. And a lot of that has to do with the return of Samuels and Gillespie. And you tweeted out today, that Dada is probably not looking good to be a factor on this year's team. But with those two coming back, I just got to ask the question a little bit. Do we have like a potential chemistry issue because guys aren't getting minutes that thought they would get minutes? Like, how is this team going to, like, what is the team, what is the program saying? What are the guys saying in terms of expectations of what role they're going to play on the team?
You know, Jay Wright did tell me that he feels as if chemistry is going to be the biggest challenge for this group's success this season. But I don't think he meant that in terms of a players getting along standpoint. I think he meant that just in a way, as like you said, you know, finding a way to get all these guys on the floor. For the freshmen who just came in, you know, they're humble. They know what they signed up for. You know, they know it's going to be tough for them to get on the floor this year. But the team returned most of its core from last season, aside from Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, right? I don't think Colin and Jermaine would have came back without talking to their team first. Them coming back indicates to me that they have unfinished business as a group. It indicates to me that they're coming back to school to win a national championship, and you can't do that with everyone on board. You know, in terms of playing time, everyone for more or less is going to play the exact same role they did last year. Right. You know, unless, like I said, unless someone like Brian Antoine explodes, or like, you know, or Caleb.
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, or Caleb Daniels proves he needs to be out there longer. It's a good problem to have. These, you know, from everything I understand, these guys love each other. They're spending time with each other. You know, they're a team in, you know, one of the truest senses of the word, you know, and I don't think there's animosity, you know, from a guy like Justin Moore, like, oh man, this was supposed to be my team this year. You guys are back. I don't think that. You know, from a conversation I had with Justin, they're allowing him to grow as a leader and come into his own, and they're not stunting his growth there. They embrace it, because the more leaders you have, the better. What I'm saying is Villanova has a lot of good problems to have.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that when you have a bunch of guys who buy in, who know what their role is, who are all on the same page, the playing time, all that stuff works itself out because everyone has a common goal in mind, and that's all that matters.
The point there is I totally get it. You know, obviously, I think the biggest challenge is Jay and his minutes allocation. He has never been a guy who plays more than 8.5 guys, and that's a maximum. Like, oftentimes, like, he's at 7.5 guys going into the tournament, and he's like, I'm riding or dying with this group, and like, to hell with everyone who thinks differently. I don't care. So, you know, that's obviously going to be an interesting situation to see play out. It's obviously good that the guys want to operate as a team. And like, I don't doubt that for a second, that they support each other, love each other, etc. Obviously, when the game, you know, when the ball tips, if you will, like, and the game starts unrolling and stuff like that, you know, what guy thinks, you know, oh man, like, if he just put me in, I would have changed the game in this way or other. Like, some of these machinations have to work themselves out. Right. In a weird way, I almost have a slight sense of, obviously I want him to be healthy, and I feel crappy that he's not healthy, but a small sense of relief that, like, you know, okay, Antoine is going to have a little bit of a recovery period to get back in, so that other guys have a chance to play early. And obviously he's not going to be expecting now, because of his injury, to be like, day one, I'm getting 20 minutes. So, like, you know, because of that, I'm hopeful that might help things a little bit, but man, there's just a lot to manage there with that, with this roster.
And there certainly is. You know, it's tough having so much talent, right?
All right. With that said, though, I want to talk a little bit about schedule outlook, etc. I gave you a little bit of crap on the 2 losses, but look, reality of the situation is that Villanova has scheduled by a wide margin, in my view, the toughest and the best non-conference schedule that I can remember. Only rivaled really in my book by the 2016 team, and we know how that ended. So, you know, you wrote a great article, a great piece on that. You know, give me a little bit of more, just give me a little bit of your flavor as to like, why do you think certain losses may happen, and where do you think we might get bit early in the season?
The schedule's a doozy, man. But I like the aggressiveness of it because at times, you know, last year during Villanova's non-conference schedule, I felt like they really didn't play anyone. And then when conference play rolled around, you kind of saw a little bit of that, right? But I mean, the schedule's stacked, right? I look at that, you know, the first big one being that November 12th game against UCLA out in LA. I mean, it's a winnable game for the Wildcats. They have the experience where they shouldn't be afraid to, you know, play anywhere. But the fact remains is that game is still on the road, and it's going to be in a hostile environment of a Bruins team that's fresh out off a Final Four run that's looking to prove that last year's results weren't a fluke. You know, Villanova coming into the house, they're going to get all they can handle. We talked about some of Villanova's defensive issues on the perimeter. UCLA has, they're stacked at guard too. And they have some, you know, and as we saw in last year's NCAA tournament, they have some bigs coming back who they play big and they play physical. And I give Villanova some issues as well. So, I mean, it's a winnable game. Like I said, Villanova, their experience, they've been here before. But in that environment, you know, against a team like that, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they walk away with a loss.
It's also game 2, right? It's the second game of the season. Like, you're still working out a ton of kinks. You don't now necessarily know how the pieces fit together. Not everything's quite clicking. So yeah, I'm with you on this one. That one would not shock me at all if it's a loss. At the same time, too, if it's a win, great. I don't know. I try not to read too much into game 2.
I view UCLA, that game, and Rob and I will get into this on future podcasts, but I view that game as a race to like 56, 60 points. Between Mick Cronin and Jay Wright, those guys love, like, you don't have enough rocks to fight with between those two guys. So that's going to be just an ugly, ugly game that'll come down probably to the final 5 minutes, and I see UCLA pulling away at home. I kind of tend to agree. A little bit of firepower. I don't think it's a fluke. They had a really good recruiting class. There was a team that kind of underperformed early in the season and then kind of got it together late. So, like, they wound up in the tournament, but they probably should have been a higher seed had they performed to their capability earlier on in the year.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I get it.
They shouldn't have been a higher seed. I think they were seeded exactly where they should have. I used to cover University of Arizona. And, you know, so, you know, I'm familiar with, you know, the Pac-12 and the Bruins. And last year's team was basically the same team, you know, I covered when the Arizona Wildcats played UCLA. And I just didn't think they were that good, you know, and that kind of showed, you know, throughout the majority of last season. But, you know, the funny thing about basketball is the only thing that matters is when you get it's getting hot in March, you know, playing your best basketball in March, and UCLA was able to do that. I think what makes them a threat next year or this season is the confidence they have now. Now they know what it's like to win at a high level, what it takes. That stuff makes a difference. Once you get a taste of that, you know, it kind of becomes muscle memory at that point, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, I think the Bruins are going to be, you know, a challenging team this year, and Villanova's going to have his work cut out for it on November 12th.
Cool. Well, they could have given Baylor a better fight than Gonzaga did.
And then, you know, kind of looking at the rest of the schedule, I mean, the game against Tennessee on neutral court, Tennessee has a freshman point guard who, you know, although he's talented, has a lot of things to figure out. And then, like, you know, we were just talking about how that's game 2 for Villanova. That's probably going to be like game 3 or 4 for Tennessee, right? You know, Colin Gillespie's going to eat him alive. It'll be great for you guys. But yeah, just a lot of new moving pieces on that Tennessee team, a lot of inexperience, and, you know, Rick Barnes, you know, never knows what the heck's going on with his rotation. So I think Villanova wins that game on a neutral court. Mohegan Sun, you know, in the next round of that, North Carolina or Purdue. I think a better draw for Villanova would be North Carolina. I just think they match up better compared to that Purdue team that's absolutely huge. Like I think they have like 3 7-footers who are like highly productive.
It's what they always do every
I don't
every
understand.
year. Like every
What the
year,
fuck do
Painter
they
has.
give?
It's unreal. It's
What
unreal.
the fuck is in the water out there? I don't understand.
He just goes on it. I feel like Matt Painter goes on. He tells his like scouting department. He does like a filter on his Excel spreadsheet. He's like only like greater than 7 foot. Okay, we've got this many people. Go find 75% of them and talk to them and bring them
But
back.
white, have to be white.
Gotta be white.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true.
So yeah, I think the Tar Heels are a slightly better draw in terms of like matching up man to man. You know, that Purdue team, they're big on the perimeter, they're big in the paint. I think that one can get ugly for the Wildcats if they're not careful. Big Five, I mean,
No, we can pass. We
Skip.
can pass, skip. I want to talk about Cuse because of what I viewed as, candidly, even though I all respect him, he worked his ass off, etc. Addition by subtraction in terms of Swider moving on to greener pastures, and oh, by the way, addition by addition for him, because the zone is perfect.
Great fit.
Great fit for Swider. I was like, Syracuse is the perfect landing spot for Cole Swider.
He should have gone to Syracuse out of high school.
From the get-go, from the onset, he should have gone to Syracuse.
Yeah.
So like I could see him going bombs away against us. But like one of the things I like about playing Syracuse, and I wish we do it every year, I wish we could play a zone team like Syracuse and a pressing team like Pitino's old Louisville teams every year, because I think you just need to get that look to help you be ready for March, because teams throw every weird thing at you when it comes to March. So I'm excited to play against the zone, win or lose. But like I still don't see a loss to Cuse there.
I don't either. You know, I like that backcourt of Buddy Boeheim and was it Gerard, I think. I like them. But that team lost a lot this offseason. I mean, who else do they got? Right. I think man for man, Villanova has, you know, way more depth and just on paper, way more talented. You know, pretty much a Syracuse home game. So they'll be at a disadvantage from that standpoint, but it's not too far from the main line either. So, you know, should be pretty even in MSG that night. And I just think that overall Villanova's talent, you know, helps them pull away early.
Nice. So. I like that. Big fan of that perspective. And then obviously you got the reigning national champions, the Baylor Bears. Obviously they lost some talent, but man, that's still a program that's a really good program.
Yeah, this isn't the same Baylor team it was last year. You know, Davion Mitchell, Maceo Teague, Jared Butler, and Mark Vidal won't be walking out the locker room.
Thank God.
For Villanova's concern, thank God. But you know, Adam Flagler's back. He lit Villanova up in the NCAA tournament, and you know, Matthew Mayer, you know, he brings a lot of the same stuff to the table as, you know, a guy like Jermaine Samuels. That's going to be a good matchup to watch. I would imagine that is the matchup, right, between those two. You know, Flagler can, you know, do a little bit of everything. He's kind of a unicorn. I like him. He's good. And, you know, front court's pretty much intact with, I'm just going to call him Jonathan. I can't pronounce his last name. I'm not going to try. And Flo Thamba. So, you know, they're gonna be straight on the inside.
Flo Thamba, great name.
And they got a great freshman class coming in. You know, and I think one of them is gonna miss some time. I think I remember seeing that. I don't remember which one it is. Maybe Langston Love. Maybe it's Langston Love who's injured, gonna miss some time. But, you know, and then on top of that, you got the Arizona transfer, James Akinjo, and that boy can go. Let me tell you, that boy can go.
Oh my God, I totally forgot that they got a Akinjo.
Oh, wow. That's a blast from the past. Holy cow.
I totally forgot that they had a Akinjo.
I liked him. At Georgetown.
But like overall, you know, when I talk to these Villanova players, you know how they like to play it humble. You know, it's all about Villanova basketball for a full 40 minutes. This game is just like the others, but Nah. At the end
No,
of the day,
it won't be
Still
the
good.
same.
competitors.
Yeah.
They're still competitors at the end of the day. This is
Yeah.
a revenge game. Although this win would not result in a trip to the Elite Eight, it is a revenge win. And although this is still a solid Baylor team, I think they lost a lot of talent. Villanova's basically bringing everyone back, and Colin Gillespie's gonna have something to say about it this time around.
Yeah.
They're gonna be going down to Baylor. Always a tough environment to play, but I think there's a lot of pride on the line for Villanova, and I can completely see them, walking out of Waco for a win.
Slater's going to be asking himself, how many posters do I have to put up
God.
to put these guys fully away?
So true.
Man, that was still a highlight. of
One
last
more, we could have done it.
year. All right, we're kind of at the end here, but I just wanted to ask, kind of like, okay, Villanova. You said in your article the experience, everything they had coming back, the backcourt makes Villanova a title contender. Realistically, what do you think is the team? Is the team stealing a title, or is it? And forget just like the random getting super hot in March thing. I mean, like, chips on the table here. Where do you think Villanova? Where do you think Villanova winds up?
Or Sweet 16. I think the ceiling is Final Four. I mean, just like what I wrote, top to bottom. You're not going to find many teams around college basketball this kind of experience, this kind of blend of veteran and youth talent, this kind of coaching, with this kind of pedigree, heading into the season. I just think that makes Villanova one of the teams to beat. They should enter the season as a top 10 team, let alone top 5. And really, this team's biggest enemy is going to be itself. They have all the talent to get through this difficult non-conference schedule of 2 losses. But when I look at the rest of the Big East,
It's a down year a little bit. Let's put it this way.
A lot of it.
Like maybe 1 or 2 losses on an off night. Villanova's going to run through the Big East. How good this team's going to be is going to be based on their ability to make adjustments. Villanova, they should be a Final Four team. They have the experience to do so. And, this year is as good as a chance as any for this program to cut down the nets in first week April.
Is there one player who, if this player were to just take a leap, this team automatically goes from okay, you're thinking Elite Eight, Final Four level team, to they're going to win? If you had to name one player.
I think it's Eric Dixon.
Yeah.
I think it's Eric Dixon. A lot's going to be expected of him this year. A lot, man. A lot's going to be on his shoulders. If this team struggles inside, he's going to get a lot of the blame. Mm-hmm. But I think he's talented. I think he's capable of it. And if everything I'm hearing this offseason is true, I think he's going to step up to the plate.
Awesome. CJ, really appreciate you coming on here with us. This has been a really good breakdown of kind of what to look forward to. I hope you'll join us mid-season. Love to kind of catch up with you as we kind of duck and dip through this season and figure out exactly, okay, now that we've seen some games, where do we stand? I would love to have you back on to do a mid-season kind of recap and outlook for the rest of the season. But thanks so much for coming on and spending so much time with us today. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Been wanting to hop on the pod for a while. It took a year, but
glad to have you.
Done,
absolutely.
We had some things to sort out on our end, but I appreciate it and thank you. And I'm looking forward to having you back on. Thanks to our listeners for listening today. We'll be back with a couple episodes before the start of the regular season. And so look out for us all October. We got a revived social media plan to help get you aware of all our episodes coming out. And we got a great team on board with us here. So if you're interested in advertising with the Full 40, or if you're interested in donating to the Full 40, we will be very appreciative of that. We don't make money. Rob and I do not make money on this podcast. We're just looking to pay the bills and bring great content to Villanova fans. So thanks again to CJ Holmes from The Athletic for joining us today. And as always, let's go Nova.